The first tremor came at dawn. Not the tremor of the earth, but a trembling in the air itself. A subtle shift that whispered through forests, over oceans, across mountains. In the small town of Althea, nestled between rolling green hills, people looked up to see the sky fracture with light. From that fracture, ships descended. Enormous ships, taller than any cathedral, with surfaces blacker than night and edges sharper than the finest blade. They moved without sound, hovering as if gravity itself had bowed before them. Humanity had only myths and dreams for such moments, and suddenly myths had arrived. Amid the chaos stood Elias Hart, a man of quiet strength. He was not a soldier, not a leader, not a genius. He was a librarian, known for gentle hands and a mind filled with words rather than weapons. Yet as the alien fleet hung over the horizon, Elias felt a clarity he had never known. Something deep inside him whispered that the world needed him, not because he was strong, but because he could endure. The first contact was not diplomacy. It was obliteration. Cities crumbled like sandcastles under the might of the alien Armada. Lasers painted the skies and ships moved with the cold logic of predators. Humanity teetered on the brink. Entire nations fell silent. Governments fractured like broken glass. Elias watched from the hills, clutching a tattered book of poetry that had been his mother's. Words against this impossible terror seemed almost laughable, but he carried them anyway. He descended into the empty streets of Althea. Silence pressed against him like a living thing, and in that silence he noticed something extraordinary. The aliens were precise but not omniscient. Their technology was fearsome, but it lacked imagination. Then he realized what others did not. They underestimated humans. Elias's first encounter with an alien was not a battle. It was curiosity. A scout, sleek and metallic, observed him from the ruins of a street lamp. Elias did not run. He did not hide. He stood holding his book. His heart thundered in his chest, yet he spoke. "I am human," he said, voice trembling but clear. "I survive. I endure." The alien studied him. Its sensors hummed, and then astonishingly it retreated, as though puzzled by something it could not quantify. Elias felt a flicker of hope. Humanity, fragile as it was, had something no alien could measure: resilience. Over the next hours, as darkness swallowed the land, Elias moved through towns, villages, and forests, leaving behind whispers of hope. People had stopped running. Some emerged from basements and shelters, eyes wide with fear and wonder. When they saw Elias alone walking toward the ships, something stirred within them. They saw not a soldier, not a savior, but a human, a symbol of defiance in flesh and bone. By nightfall, he reached the edge of the first devastated city. Skyscrapers were splintered towers, streets rivers of smoke and fire. The alien fleet hovered like cold gods. Elias raised his hands, book clutched to his chest. "You may destroy my world," he said, "but you will never destroy the human spirit." A silence fell, not an absence of sound, but a silence that felt heavy, as if the universe itself paused. And in that silence, something remarkable happened. The alien ships shivered. Sensors, weapons, and shields, everything twitched as if confused by a force they could not calculate. Elias did not understand why. Perhaps courage, perhaps defiance, perhaps the invisible weight of hope carried by an entire species. Whatever it was, the Armada faltered. For the first time since dawn, humans dared to believe they could fight back, not with guns, not with bombs, but with the stubborn, enduring pulse of their own humanity. The first night passed, not in fear, but with trembling hope. Elias walked alone beneath the alien ships, his shadow stretching long across broken streets. He carried no weapon. He carried no plan. Only the unyielding truth of what it meant to be human. And somewhere deep in the alien fleet, something could not reconcile that truth with the cold, precise logic of their conquest. Elias Hart did not sleep that night. The city lay in ruins, but he moved through it as if the devastation were a living map, tracing every path where humans might survive. Smoke curled like ghosts around broken buildings. Fires hissed and flickered, illuminating faces frozen in fear and wonder. Children clutched each other in terror. Parents shielded them with trembling arms. Yet amidst all this, a spark began to kindle, the spark of courage. By dawn, the alien Armada remained. Their ships were no longer hovering passively. They had begun mapping, scanning, cataloging everything below. But Elias noticed something that made his pulse quicken. Their movements were slower than before, hesitant. The Armada's precision had given way to confusion, subtle but undeniable. A human standing alone had shifted the calculations of an entire fleet. Elias did not understand it. He could not explain why his presence unsettled them. All he knew was that he had to move forward. He had to show humanity's heart, not with firepower but with persistence. In the early morning light he came across Mira, a young woman crouched atop the remains of a fallen bridge. Her eyes were wide with disbelief. "Are you one of them?" she whispered, fear evident in every syllable. "No," Elias said gently. "I am human. And so are you. We endure." Mira hesitated, then followed him. Others soon joined, a small group of survivors, ragged and exhausted yet drawn to Elias's quiet confidence. They did not know why, but they felt safer with him near. His calm in the face of annihilation became contagious, a subtle rhythm of courage that spread faster than fear ever could. That afternoon, the aliens struck. One of their smaller assault crafts descended into the city square, scanning for life. Elias and his growing band of humans froze. Every instinct screamed to hide. But Elias stepped forward. He opened his arms, holding the book to his chest. "I am human," he said, voice echoing across the shattered plaza. "I do not flee. I endure." The alien paused. Its sensors glowed, then dimmed slightly. It hovered for long seconds, observing. Then unexpectedly it withdrew. It was not destroyed. It was not repelled by weapons. It simply left, as if unable to comprehend the defiance it had encountered. The humans around him stared, disbelief mingling with awe. He just stood there?" Mira asked. "Yes," Elias said, and that was enough. But standing there was not enough for Elias. He knew the aliens would return, stronger and more calculating. He knew this small victory was only a prelude to the storm, yet something had changed within him, and within the humans who now followed him. Fear remained, but it was tempered by resolve. They were beginning to understand something elemental. Courage is contagious, and hope, once glimpsed, is as dangerous to tyrants as any weapon. As night fell, Elias walked alone again, this time atop the crumbling rooftops. The wind carried the acrid smell of smoke and fear, but also the faint scent of rain, a reminder that life could persist even amidst ruin. He traced constellations with his eyes, thinking of worlds beyond Earth. Had humans always been this fragile and yet this indomitable? Perhaps the universe had underestimated them as the aliens now had. He paused, listening to the faint hum of alien ships above. The sound was not like music. It was the rhythm of calculation, the pulse of something vast and indifferent. But Elias felt no fear now, only a strange sense of connection. Humanity was small, yes, but it was profound. Within the smallest acts, holding a hand, telling a story, standing in defiance, lay a force no technology could suppress. Mira and a few others joined him atop the rooftop. "Why don't they destroy us?" she asked, voice trembling. "They cannot," Elias said softly. "Not fully. They see the truth of us, and truth is heavier than their weapons, stronger than their logic. That is what terrifies them." For hours they sat in silence, the city beneath them a graveyard and a cradle all at once. And in that silence something extraordinary took root, the knowledge that even one human walking alone could shift the fate of worlds. By the time the first stars appeared, Elias had made a decision. He would not wait for the aliens to choose their next target. He would move forward, seeking not only survival but understanding. He would learn the limits of their power and the strength of human will. Because in the quiet heartbeat of humanity, he understood something the aliens could never compute. Resistance is not always loud. Sometimes it is patient, and sometimes it walks alone. Elias' heart had walked through cities reduced to skeletons. Smoke still curled from their bones, yet a strange rhythm had begun to pulse through the ruins, a rhythm of defiance, of fragile lives refusing to be erased. He had become more than a man. He had become a symbol. But symbols, he knew, could only go so far without action. The alien ships had begun to change. They no longer moved with the clean, confident precision of conquerors. Instead, they hesitated, rotated, hovered, scanning endlessly. Their logic, circuits advanced beyond human comprehension, could not account for Elias or the humans who now clung to hope. Each human action, a stand, a touch, a whispered word, introduced variables the aliens could not calculate. It was in the ruins of the city library, the skeletal remains of books lining the walls like silent witnesses, that Elias found his first real opportunity. Among toppled shelves, he discovered a control device from a downed alien scout ship. Its surface was cold, dark, and humming faintly, a heartbeat of alien technology left behind in haste. Mira approached cautiously. "Do you understand that?" she asked. "No," Elias admitted. "Not fully. But understanding is not always necessary. Sometimes observation is enough." For hours he studied the device, his fingers tracing alien symbols that seemed to shimmer as he touched them. Then, with a cautious press, a soft glow erupted. Screens flickered to life, maps of the city, patterns of patrols, streams of data in languages humans could never read. Yet amidst all the alien calculations, Elias saw something astonishing: hesitation, confusion, inconsistencies. Where the alien intelligence assumed compliance, it had found resistance. Where it expected fear, it had found courage. And for the first time, Elias realized he could exploit this. He tested the device carefully, nudging one of its systems, a subtle signal that caused a scout ship to divert its course. It worked. The ship, precise in deadly moments before, changed direction abruptly, unsure of the anomaly. Elias felt a surge of awe and fear. One human, alone, had bent alien technology, simply by existing with unshakable resolve. Word spread quickly. Survivors who had gathered in pockets throughout the city began to move in ways that disrupted alien calculations. They barricaded streets, left false signs, whispered warnings to one another. Each action was small, human, almost laughably fragile, but it compounded. The Armada, immense and terrifying, was beginning to hesitate. Night fell, and Elias stood atop the city's highest ruin, looking at the ships hovering above like dark monoliths. The wind carried ash, dust, and the faint scent of rain. He realized something profound. The aliens had the advantage of technology, precision, and sheer firepower, but humanity had something they could not compute. Elias turned to Mira, who had remained steadfastly beside him. "Do you see it?" he asked. "They think they control everything, but they cannot control us, not fully. Courage is contagious, and hope is heavier than their logic." Mira nodded, but her eyes betrayed the same fear Elias had felt countless times. "And if they strike back, they will," he said. "But they will strike at shadows, at illusions, and in those shadows, we will endure." As the night deepened, Elias used the alien device to map patrol routes and patterns. He guided small groups of humans through the ruins, avoiding the scouts, learning the rhythm of the Armada. Every successful movement was a tiny victory, but together they began to form a network, a human network capable of outmaneuvering a fleet that believed itself invincible. Somewhere deep in the alien fleet, command structures began to flicker with confusion. Sensors misread the streets, weapons misaligned, calculations returned errors. A system designed for perfect domination was unraveling, not by force, but by the subtle, persistent unpredictability of human behavior. Elias understood it now. Humans were small, fragile, imperfect. But those very imperfections, when fused with courage and will, created a force no machine could predict, no algorithm could suppress. And in the quiet that stretched across the broken city, Elias made a decision. He would not wait for the Armada to falter. He would guide humanity to show them, piece by piece, street by street, that Earth could not be conquered by logic alone. For the first time, the alien Armada hesitated, not because they were defeated, but because they could not understand what they faced. And that, Elias realized, was the first crack in their armor. The dawn was muted, painted in bruised shades of gray. The alien Armada still loomed, massive and cold above the city, but for the first time, it moved with hesitation. Elias Hart had spent the night mapping their patrols, observing their patterns and organizing the scattered survivors into small, coordinated groups. They were fragile, ragged, and terrified, yet something extraordinary had taken root. Resolve. "Are we ready?" Mira asked, her voice barely a whisper, trembling against the weight of fear. Elias looked at the small band of humans gathered behind him, men, women, and even children who had learned to move quietly through broken streets carrying only what they could hold. "Ready," he said, "doesn't mean fearless. It means we move despite fear." The plan was simple yet audacious. Using the knowledge gleaned from the alien device, they would disrupt the Armada's sensors, create illusions of human activity, and draw the scouts into traps where they could be neutralized or at least delayed. Every step, every heartbeat would be a statement. Humanity would not be passive. Humanity would not bow. The first confrontation came sooner than expected. A scout ship, sleek and deadly, descended into the plaza where Elias and the group had gathered. Its sensors scanned rapidly, seeking life, analyzing threats. "Remember," Elias whispered, "they cannot calculate the unexpected." Mira and two others triggered a series of decoy signals, improvised from fragments of alien tech. The scout hesitated, then swerved, misreading the signals as multiple targets. It moved blindly into a narrow alleyway where another team waited. Using ropes, debris, and sheer courage, they managed to topple the scout, its hull sparking and shivering as systems failed under the unpredictable human interference. The humans cheered, though the victory was small and fleeting. Elias held up a hand. "Do not celebrate yet. Every victory will cost courage, every step forward will demand patience, but we are moving. That is enough." Word of the first successful stand spread quickly among scattered survivors. More came, joining Elias in silent admiration. They were ordinary people, yet their collective defiance was extraordinary. With each passing hour, humanity's footprint grew bolder. They scavenged, communicated through signals, and began to understand the rhythm of their enemy. Elias himself moved with them, leading from the front yet always aware of the fragile line between bravery and recklessness. At night he would stand atop ruined buildings looking at the alien Armada, listening to the hum of their systems and thinking about the nature of fear. He realized that the aliens had mastered technology but not courage. They had precision, but not persistence. They could calculate, but they could not endure the weight of hope. One evening, Mira approached him, carrying a small bundle of salvaged human food. "Do you ever wonder," she asked quietly, "if we can really win?" Elias looked at her, shadows playing across his determined face. "Win?" he said. "Perhaps not yet. But we can survive, and survival, when paired with courage, can change everything." The days that followed were a dance of patience, strategy, and courage. Human groups moved through ruins like whispers, striking at scouts, disrupting patrols, and fading before the Armada could respond. Each success was a ripple, shaking the invincible facade of the alien fleet. And then, something remarkable began to happen. The Armada itself started to falter in subtle ways. Ships misaligned, patrols overlapped, communications lagged. Every time humans moved unpredictably, the aliens hesitated. Systems designed for total control were beginning to fail under the weight of human will. Elias watched it unfold with quiet awe. He did not rejoice. He understood that the path ahead was still perilous, that victories could vanish as quickly as they were won. Yet he felt something profound. Humanity was awakening, not as pawns in the shadow of invaders, but as beings of indomitable spirit, capable of bending even the most advanced technology to uncertainty. That night, as the wind carried the scent of smoke and rain across the ruins, Elias stood once more atop the tallest building. Mira and a few others joined him, eyes reflecting both exhaustion and hope. "Tomorrow," Elias said softly, "we will move again, not as isolated survivors, but as humans who will not yield. Let them see us. Let them measure us. Let them falter in our presence. We are alive. And that alone is defiance. And far above, in the cold silence of the alien armada, systems hummed in confusion. Logic could not contain the unpredictable pulse of a species that refused to be conquered. For the first time, the aliens sensed weakness, not in their weapons, not in their numbers, but in the resilience of the life they sought to extinguish. Elias smiled faintly, knowing that the rising defiance of humanity was not just survival. It was the first chapter of a reckoning the Armada had never anticipated. The dawn arrived with a quiet so profound it felt unnatural. For days, humanity had moved through ruins, through smoke, through fear, guided by Elias Hart's courage and vision. And now the alien Armada hovered above the city, massive and silent, their precision shattered by a force they could not understand, the indomitable will of humans. Elias stood on the rooftop of the tallest remaining building, the tattered book in his hands. Mira was beside him, her eyes reflecting both exhaustion and hope. Around them, humans moved silently through the streets below, carrying the fragile remnants of life and civilization. Above, the Armada trembled. Sensors flickered, shields quivered, weapons misaligned. The ships that had seemed invincible now hovered like creatures uncertain of their own strength. Every calculation they had made, every plan they had executed, had been undermined by one simple truth. Humans were unpredictable, resilient and unbreakable in spirit. Elias raised his voice, not in anger, not in triumph, but in the quiet authority of someone who had endured. "We are human," he said. "We endure. We do not yield. We do not flee, we live, and nothing you possess can erase that." A strange stillness fell across the city. Birds long silenced by smoke and fear began to stir. The wind carried the faint scent of rain and ash, and somewhere within the alien Armada, a force calculated to dominate, conquer, and erase began to fail, not in pieces but as a whole. One by one, the ships collapsed into silence. Not with explosions, not with fire, but with the soundless recognition of a truth they could not compute. The sensors shut down. Weapons dimmed. Engines ceased. The Armada, once a dark cloud over the earth, became inert, frozen in awe and confusion. Mira's hand found Elias's. "It's over?" she whispered. Elias looked down at the streets, at the survivors emerging from ruins, at the children blinking at sunlight after days of fear. "Not over," he said softly. "It's beginning. Humanity endures. That is only the beginning." People came forward, hesitant at first, then with growing confidence. They touched the ruins, tended to one another, and whispered prayers of gratitude. But amidst the relief, they also carried understanding. Survival was no longer passive. It was active. It was defiance made manifest. The silence above was absolute. The alien Armada, designed for control, domination, and fear, had collapsed without a fight. And the reason was simple. It had faced something no technology could defeat, no calculation could anticipate, and no weapon could destroy. It had faced the weight of human will, the stubborn pulse of life, and the courage of one man who refused to walk away. Elias walked among the survivors, his steps quiet but steady. He saw Mira helping an elderly man, children laughing as they explored ruins for the first time in days, and strangers embracing with the joy of shared survival. Every face, every gesture, every heartbeat was a testament to something the aliens could never understand: the beauty, fragility, and strength of humanity. He raised the book in his hands one last time, letting the wind carry the pages. "We are human," he said, voice carrying across the city. "We endure, and no force, no matter how immense, can silence that truth." The people around him echoed his words, not as a chant, not as a ritual, but as a declaration of existence. And for the first time, the earth itself seemed to breathe in relief, as though the planet recognized the triumph of its people. Far above, the alien fleet remained still, silent, powerless against the force it could never quantify. And in that silence, humanity understood a new truth. Victory is not always measured in fire or blood, but in courage, endurance, and the refusal to yield. Elias looked toward the horizon, toward the mountains and forests that had survived, toward the sky that now seemed clearer than it had in decades. Humanity had endured the impossible. Humanity had walked alone, and in doing so, had reshaped the universe's understanding of life. And in that quiet, enduring triumph, one truth resonated above all. Even in the shadow of extinction, humans would walk, survive, and endure. One human had walked alone, and the alien armada had collapsed in silence. The city had become a battlefield of shadows. Smoke curled from broken towers, fire flickered in alleyways, and humanity moved like ghosts through the ruins. Elias Hart walked among them, not as a commander with orders, but as a guide, a symbol, a reminder of what it meant to endure. Every footstep carried a message. Survival was not enough. Defiance mattered. The alien armada had grown cautious. Their patrols were scattered, sensors misfiring, and ships hovered hesitantly, calculating every human movement with uncertainty. They could not comprehend the patterns Elias and his growing human network created. Each step, each whispered instruction, each act of courage rippled across their systems, creating confusion they could not repair. It was in the early hours of the third day that Elias realized the cracks were no longer small. One of the larger scout ships, designed to overwhelm entire city blocks, had paused mid-descent. Its systems flickered, its weapons misaligned. A human squad, following Elias's careful guidance, had planted a series of decoy signals and subtle electromagnetic disruptions. The ship faltered, then retreated, leaving behind stunned silence. Mira, standing beside Elias, exhaled sharply. "They're scared?" "Not scared," Elias said softly, eyes fixed on the retreating ship. "Confused. They cannot calculate the unpredictability of human resolve, and that confusion is growing. Humans were no longer scattered pockets of survivors. They were forming networks, silent and mobile. Small teams disrupted patrols, diverted scouts, and created illusions of massive resistance where none existed. Fires were started to obscure vision. Signals were sent to mislead the sensors. Every act, no matter how small, amplified human presence in ways the aliens could not comprehend. That night, Elias climbed atop the highest ruin, the alien armada looming above like a dark storm. His mind raced. He knew this was not victory. Victory was still far away, but it was proof that humanity could influence events on a scale no one had believed possible. Even the smallest disruption in alien coordination could have massive consequences. Mira joined him, her voice a soft murmur in the night. "Do you think we can really drive them back?" Elias shook his head slowly, a faint smile on his lips. "We don't need to drive them back, not yet. We need to survive, to endure, to make them doubt. Doubt is a weapon humans wield better than any laser or bomb, and they are beginning to feel it." In the following days, their actions grew bolder. Teams moved through abandoned districts, targeting communications nodes, scrambling sensors, and using alien technology against itself. Elias had learned enough to manipulate minor systems, redirecting drones, creating illusions of human strength. Each successful operation emboldened the survivors, and each failure taught them more about the alien fleet's limitations. The aliens, for their part, responded with increasing caution. Ships hovered further apart, formations became rigid, and every movement was measured and slow. Elias noticed subtle signs: minor system failures, patrol overlap, energy fluctuations. The Armada, once perfect in its logic, was showing the first cracks of imperfection. Imperfection caused not by weaponry, but by the relentless persistence of human will. One evening, as rain washed the ash from the streets, Elias and Mira watched from a rooftop. The city below seemed quiet, yet it was alive with human activity. A squad moved silently. Another placed a signal disruption, and another guided civilians to safety. Each act was small, almost invisible, yet each contributed to the widening rift in the alien calculations. "They can't see the whole picture," Elias said, his voice low, almost to himself. "They only see pieces. And we are teaching them that humans are unpredictable, that humans endure, that humans are heavier than any calculation." Mira's eyes reflected the flickering city lights and the looming shadow of the alien armada. "You really think one species can make this much difference?" Elias placed a hand on her shoulder. One human walking alone changed the course of their logic once. Hundreds working together can make them question everything they thought they knew. And that, Mira, that is our strength. Above, the alien armada shimmered, massive yet faltering. Their sensors, their calculations, their perfect order. None of it could fully account for the pulse of a species that refused to yield. Humanity's presence, subtle and persistent, had begun to fracture their certainty. Elias looked at the city, at the people moving through the ruins, and allowed himself a moment of quiet pride. The cracks were deepening, and soon he knew the Armada would have to face a truth they could not compute. Humans would not be silenced. The city had become a theater of human will. Every street, every ruined building, every shadow was a testament to the stubbornness of a species the alien Armada had underestimated. Elias' heart moved among the survivors, no longer just a guide, but a strategist, a living symbol of what it meant to endure. The aliens had begun to hesitate on a scale that had never been recorded. Ships hovered farther apart, patrols overlapped, communication relays misfired, and weapon systems miscalculated by milliseconds that could decide life or death. Humanity was small, fragile, and yet the Armada faltered before their unpredictability. Elias knew the final test was approaching. The alien command ship, the massive vessel at the heart of the fleet, the mind controlling the invading force, was still intact, hovering high above the city. Every system within it relied on precision, logic, and certainty. Elias understood one immutable truth. Their greatest weakness was their inability to comprehend humanity itself. He gathered his people in a ruined square, their faces marked with exhaustion, dirt, and hope. Mira stood beside him, eyes wide but steady. "Are we ready?" she asked. Elias's gaze swept across the group. Children, parents, survivors, ordinary people who had learned to move like shadows, strike like whispers, and endure like legends. "Ready?" he repeated, voice calm but fierce. "We are not fearless, but we are human, and that alone is enough to bend even the coldest logic." The operation began at dawn. Using the stolen and repurposed alien devices, Elias coordinated teams to simulate massive human activity across multiple districts. Fires were lit, signals disrupted, decoys deployed. Scout ships descended repeatedly, only to be misled, delayed, or neutralized. Each human movement compounded the alien confusion. Above, the command ship pulsed with activity. Systems flickered. The sensors that should have cataloged the city with perfection were failing. Every human act, the simplest, most natural gestures, introduced variables it could not compute. Every heartbeat, every flicker of courage, rippled through its logic circuits like a hammer on unbreakable steel. Elias moved to the city's highest rooftop, holding the book that had started it all. He spoke aloud, not expecting an answer, yet knowing it carried weight. "We are human. We endure. We do not yield to fear. You may have power, you may have weapons, you may have precision, but you do not understand what it means to hope, to persist, to live." Somewhere deep within the command ship, the alien leadership, if it could be called that, paused. Its systems shivered under the weight of incomprehensible variables. Courage, defiance, resilience. Every calculation it had relied on, every assumption of inevitability began to fracture. The fleet's ships began to falter. Weapons misaligned. Shields flickered. Communication relays overlapped. The Armada's supreme confidence unraveled under the simplest of truths. Humans could not be quantified, could not be predicted, could not be controlled. From the ruins below, survivors watched as ships trembled mid-air, as if the very metal recognized that their logic could not dominate the human heart. Whispers spread. "They hesitate. They cannot understand us." Elias's voice rang out again, carrying over the city. One human walked alone. One human defied them, and now hundreds, thousands endure. "We are not pawns. We are not victims. We are human, and that is impossible to destroy." The alien Armada did not respond with lasers, bombs, or fire. They faltered in silence, not because they had been defeated in combat, but because the foundation of their invasion, the cold certainty that humanity would obey or die, was gone. One human had shown them that life cannot be reduced to equations. Hundreds of humans, moving as one, had shattered their perception of control. Mira looked at Elias, awe and relief mingling in her gaze. "It's working," Elias did not answer. He simply watched the ships hovering uncertainly, their immense presence reduced to hesitation. And in that hesitation he glimpsed the truth. Humans had not fought with weapons, with armies, or with machines. They had fought with spirit, courage, and the relentless weight of existence itself. The city was still in ruins. The fire still burned. The scars of destruction would remain for generations. But above, in the silence of hesitation, humanity had achieved something no technology could ever calculate. Victory of spirit over fear. And Elias knew, deep in his bones, that the final collapse was near. Not through firepower, but through a force the alien Armada could not comprehend. The unstoppable, unyielding heart of one species.